Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to focus on a micronutrient once again on our show. I know it. We've really been bringing these micros to light of here's one that you really want to watch for. Now, on a soil test, when you're looking at micronutrients and parts per million, one that you want to see the most parts per million of is iron. We're going to talk about why it's so important for your plants.
We're also going to discuss extend versus enlist. When it comes to soybeans, you may be wondering on your farm, which trait should I run with? We're going to talk through the advantages and disadvantages of each.
Well, speaking of disadvantages, if you let our weed of the week go to seed on your farm, you're going to have some serious disadvantages when it comes to yield. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed, but first, here's our farm basics.
You spend all year working hard to get as much yield as possible at harvest. The last thing you want to do is put your grain in the bin and have it spoil before you take it to market. Introducing the Grain Temp Guard from Farm Shop MFG. Designed and built by a farmer looking for a low-cost monitoring solution for existing bins, the Grain Temp Guard tracks temperature and humidity with an alarm system to alert you when your grain exceeds safe thresholds. For more information on a system for your bins, visit farmshopmfg.com.
Each week here on Ag PhD, we do our Farm Basics segment to address a lot of questions we get from non-farmers. Well, one in particular is, what's the difference between winter crops and spring crops?
Well, that is a really interesting question, and it does get confusing when you hear winter wheat and spring wheat, and you think, wait a minute, isn't it all just wheat? Well, it is just wheat, but the question is going to be, when is it going to be planted? When is it going to be growing in fields? When we think about a winter crop, those actually get planted in the fall or late summer with the idea that they will go dormant over the winter and be ready to harvest in the spring or very early summer.
So we think about wheat, for example. Well, we raise both spring wheat and winter wheat on our farm. The winter wheat we'll usually plant sometime in September. A lot of times it's mid-September. And believe it or not, we actually only harvest the winter wheat maybe 2 or 3 weeks earlier than we harvest the spring wheat that gets planted in the spring. The spring wheat we'll usually go out there and we'll plant it in late March, sometime in April. Well, with the winter wheat, we're typically harvesting, I'd say, let's call it just after the 4th of July. With spring wheat, we're harvesting in late July.
All right, well, you think about why would you do that? And there must be some money in it. There must be a good opportunity to make more yield. And there's a good opportunity to make decent yields in winter crops. The whole challenge is going to be where these crops are grown. Oftentimes it's in dry areas of the country, on dry land, non-irrigated production. And farmers are trying to time out, when am I going to get moisture and when is the heat going to come next year? Now, by putting that winter crop out in the fall, if you catch some fall moisture, great. That crop gets up, it gets started, and it has a nice root system underneath it. So when spring comes around, it can just take off and get growing right away. Now, sometimes we don't get that rain in the fall. It doesn't come till late, and all of a sudden it's snow, and that winter wheat doesn't even germinate in the fall. That can be a real problem. Now, with spring wheat, the challenge may be that that moisture came too early, and growers couldn't even get out in the field to plant it. So they're happy they had the winter wheat in the ground, so they at least got a crop.
Well, that leads me into the reason why I really like winter crops, and that's just the work is done. Usually in the spring, we're planting corn, we're planting soybeans, we're planting all these different plots that we do and research, and we're just busy. So if we can get some of that work done in the fall, it's awesome. And Darren also mentioned a little bit more yield potential. Yes, and you think about why there's a little bit more yield potential. It's just because that crop had more time to grow, more time to explore the soil, to find nutrients, bring them into the plant, and turn them into more bushels.
Well, winter crops and spring crops are both very valuable for farmers, but one thing that is not is our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?
Tired of that old warped poly boom ruining your spray applications? Express Boom from Hypro is a fully assembled stainless steel boom that ensures an even application of chemicals every time. Don't wait another season, upgrade today. Hypro, helping you spray better.
Tough, precise, efficient. Strip tillage with the Soil Warrior brings the future to your farm. Learn more at soilwarrior.com/agphd.
In 1949, Morton Buildings constructed our first machine storage building to establish our bond with the farming community. Since then, our relationship has grown, and so have our product offerings. From the smallest specialized operation to the largest agricultural enterprise, we understand the needs of your business and continue to evolve to meet industry demands. Plus, when you build a Morton building, you're backed by the strongest warranty in the business. To learn more about the Morton Advantage, visit mortonbuildings.com.
More choices, more money. With Bayer Plus Rewards, you choose from our broad portfolio of high-performance products. Earn more money on the eligible products that are right for your farm. And use our new portal to see your purchases, track your rewards, and decide how you want to use them. Visit mybayerplus.com to sign in and start earning. That's the advantage of more control in your hands. That's the plus.
It starts with genetics, what you're made of. It takes agronomy. It's local. It's knowing your land and having the tools to put the right product in the right place. It's built on service with trust, grit, and determination. Because it turns out, what it takes to make the best product is a lot like what it takes to make a farmer. Golden Harvest, rooted in genetics, agronomy, and service.
Increase your productivity with Hypro's dual react control system. The dual nozzle body design allows you to drive at the speed you want while maintaining the rate and droplet size you need. Hypro, helping you spray better.
One of the biggest questions on soybean farms across the country going into 2020 is, which trait will you use, extend, or enlist? We're going to talk today about some of the strengths and weaknesses of each of these traits.
Personally, I'm really happy that we have these choices because just a few years back, we were looking at, well, do I want to use Roundup Ready soybeans or Liberty Link soybeans? And I had one mode of action that I could spray on these beans. Now, each of those trait platforms have multiple modes of action that I can use post-emerge. That's great, and it's going to be even better when we have Extend Flex that also adds glufosinate or Liberty tolerance to the Extend trait. Now with Extend, you have the opportunity to spray Roundup and you have the opportunity to spray dicamba over the top of those soybeans. That's great. It's worked great. The genetics have been nice, but we're going to talk about some of the differences because there's so many questions coming in every week to our show about, hey, what do you think about the new Enlist soybeans? Are they going to yield and are they going to perform?
Okay, before we get to the Enlist, let's talk a little bit more about Extend. I love the ability to, or love having the ability to spray dicamba out there because dicamba can control a lot of the tough Roundup resistant weeds, everything from mare's tail to ragweed to Palmer pigweed and water hemp, even kochia. So that's great. Here's the big problem though. I love how Darren said you have the opportunity to spray dicamba. Well, you may or may not have the opportunity to spray dicamba post-emerge because there are some states that have more restrictions than what the federal label will say on dicamba. In other words, well, I'll just give you an example. There are a couple states like Minnesota and Illinois. June 20th, you're cut off. Well, what happens if you plant your soybeans June 20th? Well, now you do not have the opportunity to spray dicamba post-emerge, and that's the biggest challenge that I see with that whole technology is with the early dates, you don't get the chance to spray the weeds when they are there. You have to spray based on the calendar date.
Well, the reason that some states put on different regulations or additional regulations on dicamba applications and extend crops is because they're concerned about volatility and drift-related issues. Now, you may say, well, they're concerned about those, but how many have they had? Let's face it, there have been some. There have been some issues out there, and not all of it is due to not following the label. Now, the label has got a number of different requirements versus any other products that you're using where you're limited on what spray nozzles, what tank mix partners, how much water you have to use, all those things. Those things have actually proven to be pretty good. Where growers have followed the label to the letter, we've had very few issues with volatility or drift that we've become aware of. It's been, a few different things that have happened out there. The volatility piece is the one that's most concerning to me. Physical drift, hey, if it's windy and you're spraying, shame on you. If you're not using the right nozzles, you got fine particles and it moves over to the neighbor's field before it hits the ground, shame on you. Those are things that we know about and we've known about for years. The volatility piece where you spray it, it lands, and it moves later, that's a real concern for us. And even the air inversions, we've never seen this kind of issue with air inversions before, like we have with dicamba applications. You got to be aware of those things. You can control this. If you're nervous about, hey, I'm planting Extend, but I'm nervous about spraying the dicamba, I'm not nervous about it. I just want to make sure that I'm following the label and doing things right.
Okay, so a lot of people, rather than going to Extend and having to spray dicamba, are interested in Enlist because you can spray Liberty, or you can spray the new 2,4-D that has virtually no volatility or drift properties, or Roundup. So you've got 3 different choices there for non-selective herbicides, or mostly non-selective herbicides. So that sounds really good. So why would a person want to stay with Extend when you can go over to Enlist and have all these options? Well, probably the biggest reason is the genetics. So far, a lot of people have had fantastic yields out of the Extend.
Well, it's not that they haven't had good luck with the Enlist, they just haven't planted it yet, Brian. And whenever you're comparing something of, well, I don't know about this one, but I do know about that one, I get it. That's a tough choice. Now, when I look at the 2 genetics, and I look at them a lot, and I have for the last few years, side by side, same maturities of beans from Extend to Enlist, I think the yield is very comparable. I'm not concerned about there's going to be any sort of yield drag issue. And in fact, where we're hearing yield drag issues out in the industry is from companies that don't have Enlist beans to sell. Don't listen to people with those self-serving messages that, oh, there's yield drag. Well, how many do you have to offer me? Well, I don't have any. Oh, okay, so I'm just going to badmouth somebody else? That's terrible for our industry. I hope that stops this year, but if you're hearing, oh, Enlist doesn't yield, that's absolute garbage. What I do look at is, what are the defensive traits that I need? And if I need a bean that can tolerate frog eye, or I need a bean that can tolerate white mold, or I need a bean that can tolerate high pH soils or salty situations, make sure you're picking the right one. If you can't find that in the Extend trait, but you can in the Enlist trait, then great, plant the Enlist. Or if you can't find it in the Enlist trait, but you do in the Extend trait, great, plant the defensive traits that you need, especially when there's ones that you really can't protect against, like root knot nematode, for example. If you can't find a root knot nematode resistant variety, you just don't have a substitute for that. There's not a great treatment that's 100% a root knot nematode. Or with white mold. If you've got a soybean that's terrible on white mold, I'm not going to plant it on my farm because white mold's an issue that I can't 100% stop.
So in summary, with Extend versus Enlist in terms of soybeans, our general opinion, based on all of our research around the United States, has simply been, we like Extend, we like Enlist. Either direction you want to go is fine in our opinion, as long as you're picking something that has the defensive traits that you need, and just make sure that you are looking at that. Also, I guess I would just say, if everybody around you is planting Extend, it's going to be a little harder for you to switch Enlist. But the flip side is, a lot of people want to go Enlist. So if all your neighbors are going to plant Enlist and you're the only person with Extend, it's probably going to be hard to stay Extend. So I know it's a challenging question. It's something we're looking at even for our own farm. There's no one perfect answer, but the main reason we're talking about this today is just so you understand, we really love both options, and both options are far superior to the old Roundup, conventional, or Liberty Link trait choices that we used to have, because these new choices allow you more opportunity to get those resistant weeds under control.
Well, we're glad to have more choices, especially when it comes to controlling weeds like our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed later in the show.
Do you feel like there's never enough time to get everything done before planting? The window for spring work is quick and unforgiving. Give yourself the upper hand with the ProTill High Performance High Speed Disc. More and more farmers agree the ProTill is the right tool for spring field conditions and heavy residue management. Zero maintenance bearings, independent disc technology, oversized pins and bushings allow the ProTill to handle whatever field or conditions you can throw at it. Degelman High Performance Equipment.
There are a lot of steps to having a perfect season. Don't let your fertilizer plan be the step that trips you up. No matter when you apply fertilizer, no matter how, AgroLiquid has the experts and the products that'll help you move closer to your target and hit the bullseye. AgroLiquid moves you closer to your target.
If you're looking to expand your farm's grain handling, you want everything to be fast and efficient. The Quick Belt from Norwood Sales is your all-around grain handling solution. Our conveyor-based system uses an 18-inch belt and a 10-inch tube, which minimizes seed damage while moving more than 10,000 bushels an hour. That's fast enough to fill a semi in 6 minutes. Plus, our hood is designed to gently direct the flow of grain straight down, keeping your crop in condition. Keep your grain and your farm moving with the Quick Belt from Norwood Sales.
Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whenever you want. In your life and on your farm, Case IH AFS Connect gives you more control. Monitor your operation, manage your fleet and your farm data your way. Case IH. Rethink productivity.
I need results. So I choose the one system I trust to take weeds down and keep them down on even my toughest acres with the kind of yield potential that helps keep me in the black to deliver my kind of results season after season. I choose the Roundup Ready Extend crop system. I choose results.
Today we're going to focus on iron. It's a super important micronutrient and one that you definitely need to include in your soil testing program on your farm.
All right, iron has a lot of different roles in the plant. One of the things it does is it helps with chlorophyll production. In addition to that, it helps with respiration, photosynthesis, even nitrogen fixation in legumes. So there are a lot of things that iron does overall, but you probably don't think much about iron because there is typically a lot of iron in most soils. In fact, we often see the subsoil having much more iron than the topsoil. So I would just really encourage you, make sure you're testing your soil, see what you've got for levels out there, and a lot of times what we're talking about is 20 to 40 parts per million on a Midwest Labs DTPA test. Also, you want to make sure your levels for iron are higher than your levels for manganese so you don't run into issues with not getting enough iron actually into and utilized by the plant.
Well, this is one of the things, Brian. You can have iron in the soil, but is it in the right form to get into your plant? And when we're doing plant tissue analysis, this is one of the things that we're looking at. Are we getting enough iron uptake? But also as we walk soybean fields, especially early in the growing season in high pH soils. We see iron deficiency chlorosis as a problem in soybeans where many growers are trying to pick different soybean varieties to try to avoid the yellowing that they're seeing out in fields. Iron deficiency chlorosis looks like a yellow leaf with green veins. And if you're seeing that on soybean plants, chances are iron deficiency chlorosis could be the issue. But the problem here is in high pH soils, the iron form that's in the soil is in the ferric form instead of the ferrous form that the plants really want. So when you get into that high pH, iron chemically converts over into a different form of iron that's not available. So you do have the iron, you just have the wrong soil pH.
Okay, so we talked about all that just within the last couple of weeks here on the show. But the big thing is we want to think about iron as this really important nutrient for plants, and we want you to consider, even in your low pH soils where you don't have iron deficiency chlorosis, looking at what are my iron levels and do I need to add some iron to the soil. Everybody who has IDC knows that they've got that problem of the form is wrong, so they just need to get the pH down. Okay, problem solved. Or you can certainly use some chelated iron in furrow, and then that will at least give you the Band-Aid fix and you'll have a better result this year. But here's another thing that I want you to think about. If you have low pH soil, are you liming? Okay, when you're liming, one of the first nutrients that can get tied up is iron when you over-lime. So be careful about how much lime you're putting out. We suggest that you use lime in moderation. Use more of a long-term plan rather than saying, oh, I need 10 tons, I'm just going to throw it all out in one shot. You can do that if you want to, but if you're not supplementing with some iron, it's very possible that all of a sudden your plants could become deficient in iron.
When it comes to iron, what you're probably thinking right now is, all right, if I have determined that I need some iron on my farm, how am I going to get the iron? What forms are available and when am I going to apply it?
There are a lot of different ways you can get iron. For example, you should look at all things that are going to get applied to your farm: compost, manure. We use some water treatment lime. We get some free iron out of that. I would just take a look at all these different things, because you never know what might contain some iron, and even though it might be small, that might be all the iron that your next crop is going to need. Now certainly you could buy some commercial fertilizer. We've used iron sulfate on our farm before. We've used some chelated iron, both in 2x2 and in furrow. We've also sprayed some foliar products that contain low rates of iron. So there are a lot of different sources for iron. We would just tell you, hey, if you're really short in the soil, you probably better get something on the soil that's going to contain quite a few pounds. Otherwise, make sure you're banding so that iron definitely gets into your plant this year.
One last point that I would make is when you're looking at your lawns, look at iron. We're seeing many different lawn fertilizers now adding some iron to the blend, and we're seeing darker, greener lawns in many cases. Why? Because, as Brian mentioned before, iron's important in photosynthesis, and if we're short of iron in our lawns, we're not going to have the dark green grass that we're looking for. So anyway, just a little tip to keep in mind for around the house.
Well, another tip we'll give you if you want top yields is to control our Weed of the Week. It's coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is brought to you by Corteva Agriscience, Agriculture Division of Dow DuPont. Finish the fight against tough weeds with the Enlist Weed Control System.
Weeds are tough, but we're tougher. With unrivaled weed control, reduced drift, and near zero volatility. So, who's tough now?
Our Weed of the Week is toothed spurge. Now, Darren, when you were a young agronomist, this was one of the weeds you talked to me about.
I am a young agronomist,
yeah,
Brian. Come on.
Yeah, good point.
All right, so when we're thinking about tooth spurge, here's one of the identifying features is break the stem. It's got milk in it. So that's doesn't happen very often. There aren't too many weeds like that, so that gives you one idea of, hey, I might have tooth spurge here. Now, when you also think about tooth spurge, Roundup doesn't do a good job on it. So we often see this in fields where a farmer just sprayed a low rate of Roundup, and he said, you know, I did pretty good, except for this weed, it's tooth spurge.
Yep, and that's usually where we got the phone calls. So what did we have to go out there with? In soybeans is where we typically are going to see this problem, and post-emerge, now we've got 2,4-D tolerant soybeans, dicamba tolerant soybeans, Liberty tolerant soybeans. All those things can work fairly well. We used to use Basagran. Pursuit had some activity.
I look at it this way, Brian. We didn't used to fight this weed back in the 70s and 80s. So the things that we were doing back in those days were working really well. We really started seeing this as a problem in the late 1990s into the early 2000s when everybody was just spraying Roundup. So look at some of those older chemistries. We sprayed a lot of Buctril back in those days.
Wait, that's for corn. Yeah, let's not jump around here. Let's stay on the soybean thing real quick. We suggest using the 3 Pre's, a yellow, metribuzin, and a PPO like Valor or Authority. Then you get to corn. Yes, Buctril, Status, the HPPDs. I mean, there are a lot of things that can work there. Pre-emerge, I'd suggest getting something out with Sharpen. Maybe Verdict would be a pretty good choice.
Yeah, and wheat, it's sharpened down, it's husky over the top, and you won't see tooth spurge.
Well, that's it for our Weed of the Week, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
More choices, more money. With Bayer Plus Rewards, you choose from our broad portfolio of high-performance products. Earn more money on the eligible products that are right for your farm. And use our new portal to see your purchases, track your rewards, and decide how you want to use them. Visit mybayerplus.com to sign in and start earning. That's the advantage of more control in your hands. That's the plus.
In 1949, Morton Buildings constructed our first machine storage building to establish our bond with the farming community. Since then, our relationship has grown, and so have our product offerings. From the smallest specialized operation to the largest agricultural enterprise, we understand the needs of your business and continue to evolve to meet industry demands. Plus, when you build a Morton building, you're backed by the strongest warranty in the business. To learn more about the Morton Advantage, visit mortonbuildings.com.
You work hard and invest a lot of time and money to make your crop each year. Don't let that effort go to waste. Moisture loss from over-drying stored grain can cost you thousands for each percentage point lost. Get the Grain Temp Guard Alarm HT from Farm Shop MFG. The Alarm HT uses temperature and humidity sensors to alert you when conditions in your bin put your crop at risk. Don't shrink your profits. Learn more about this low-cost solution at farmshopmfg.com.
Do you feel like there's never enough time to get everything done before planting? The window for spring work is quick and unforgiving. Give yourself the upper hand with the ProTill High Performance High Speed Disc. More and more farmers agree the ProTill is the right tool for Springfield conditions and heavy residue management. Zero maintenance bearings, independent disc technology, oversized pins and bushings allow the ProTill to handle whatever field or conditions you can throw at it. Degelman High Performance Equipment.
There are a lot of steps to having a perfect season. Don't let your fertilizer plan be the step that trips you up. No matter when you apply fertilizer, no matter how, AgroLiquid has the experts and the products that'll help you move closer to your target and hit the bullseye. AgroLiquid moves you closer to your target.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whenever you want. In your life and on your farm, Case IH AFS Connect gives you more control. Monitor your operation, manage your fleet and your farm data your way. Case IH. Rethink productivity.
A field cultivator is a critical tool on many farms. This fall, there were some issues being created by field cultivators that I wanted to address as they could impact the success of next year's crop. It's the topic of today's Iron Talk. Worn shovels can be a big problem on field cultivators. In the rush to get things done this fall, maintenance and performance monitoring didn't always get done. Visibly, worn shovels lead to streaks and overall poor results. An even bigger deal is what's happening below ground. Uneven wear can lead to a seed bed that isn't perfect, which results in a huge variability with plant emergence throughout the field. And this, of course, leads to lower yield. So do some digging behind your tillage to see what that tillage floor looks like and if it's level. The first place we generally see shovels wear out is right behind the wheels. If you catch it early, you can still move the shovels around in the machine to try to extend their life. However, shovels really aren't that expensive, so replacement is a solid option. One other thing to consider is the flowability of corn stalks and other residue through your field cultivator. We're seeing a shift to wider shank spacing and wider sweeps to accommodate this. Just make sure the pattern still does a nice job with light tillage and the stirring and mixing of fertilizer and pre-emerge herbicides to allow maximum crop growth and weed control for your farm. Finally, one tip that's made a difference for us on our farm is putting shank extensions on right behind the wheels, so you don't have to run the entire machine deeper to wipe out wheel tracks. Get your field cultivator in top shape this winter so you can achieve the yields and herbicide performance you desire this spring. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
That's all the time we have for our show today. But if you're looking for more agronomic information, we'd encourage you to check out the Ag PhD radio show, where we take your live phone calls each weekday. It's on Sirius XM channel 147 at 2 p.m. Central.
Don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.